It's Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station, WNJC 1360 AM, Washington Township, Philadelphia. Broadcasting online, WNJC Radio.
And welcome to Greenberg News with your host, Brian Greenberg, on WNJC 1360 AM. This is a new year, and this is year 20 of Greenberg News' existence. We keep rocking it, and because I'm able to bring on great guests who make me look good. Such as my first guest, we have lined up Jacqueline Newman, managing partner of the law firm Berkman, Bodker, Newman, and Rudd, a matrimonial law firm located in New York City. And if I may be so modest to say that she's one of the top keen legal minds in the city of New York, if not nationally. Is that a fair assessment, Jacqueline? I hope I gave you the proper credit and homage that you deserve.
Oh, Brian, thank you so much. You are so kind. I'm blushing.
Well, like I said, I know talent when I see it, and I like to spread the word. Given the new year, I've run across some interesting and kind of fascinating facts. This is the year you're into the matrimonial field that couples decide to fall apart and go away. Why is that, by the way? Why do you think that all of a sudden? Is it because it's cold out and they figure I don't want to be cold and next to this guy anymore and I'm out of here?
Maybe. Well, they do say that January is divorce month. It might be because, close quarters, they're no longer able to run outside of the house, so therefore they want to run away pure.
I didn't think about that. Cabin fever really gets very high, I guess, but not in a good way.
Not in a good way at all. Yeah, no, it is a big time for matrimonial attorneys. A lot of people, I think what happens is a lot of people probably are thinking about it toward the end of the year, but, who really wants to start a divorce action right before Christmas and all of the holidays?
Yeah, that kind of kills the mood.
It does kill the mood a little bit. So people try to stay together, I think, during the holidays. But come the new year, a lot of people just take the position of, I'm not doing this another year. I'm ready to get out, starting new.
And that it's just so quirky. I think it really is. That would make sense with the weather, and of course the holidays is a time when people have this idealistic view of what the holidays should be, and then they look in the mirror at their own life and they decide that this isn't working and I got to move on.
It happens, and there's actually been research done. I had found that FindLaw.com did an analysis of American divorce filings between 2008 and 2011 with legal research service Westlaw, and it revealed a spike in divorces in January, followed by a rise and then a peak in late March. So it's interesting that they see this, and they also said that there's more searches online for divorce and related phrases like family law and child custody. It jumps 50% from December to January.
Wow.
And then continues to swell through March. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So you know what you got to do, Jacqueline? If I'm in your firm, you guys need to be on a firm like Yodel that places your ads out there when everyone's doing all this search this time of the year.
Yeah, well, definitely having an internet presence is important because that is now how many people are finding their counsel.
So it's, but it is tough. So let me ask you then, given all that, we have, your niche in the marketplace is you deal with the people of higher income, higher net worth. And which led me to a question about, I thought are the rich different? That's what I believe Gatsby asked. And if that's the case, and apparently they're getting all this divorce, what's going on? I thought they were of greater pockets and greater lifestyle. Why would they choose to sort of go other ways?
No, the rich aren't different. People are still putting their pants on one leg at a time. They might be designer pants, but they're still being, put on the same way. It really just comes down to, what you're fighting about. They still have the same problems. They still have children that they love very much and, want to make sure that they're being raised, in a way that everybody agrees. You have more assets to fight about. I think that, one thing that I find is that in wealthier couples, sometimes it's easier to avoid divorce to some degree. They live in bigger houses. They're able to, money can definitely put people in a position where they, can do events and do things that are more enjoyable, that they can kind of ignore their spouse a little bit more. That said, they go out more, they vacation more, they're in happier places at times. But when it comes down to it, people still are just unhappy relationships. People are people no matter how much money's in their pocket.
So given this, so the patterns are the same. It doesn't matter the wealth. There's nothing different other than the I guess the material items clearly are, were more in place, but because you always hear that the number one cause of divorce is financial, or is that, ignoring the wealthy for the moment, is that not the biggest cause of divorce?
I mean, that wouldn't be what I would say is the biggest cause of divorce. I would say it really comes down to communication. It's a question of people just not being able to speak the same language anymore. And, I think people say it comes down to money, but it's really the way they communicate about money and everything else, and their children, and just their lifestyles and things that, are painful to them. It's whether they can, fight well is what I say. I mean, everyone can get along well when you're getting along. But the question really comes down to, can you fight well? How do you hit below the belt? Are you able to, speak to somebody in a way that they can hear them? And if you can't, that's really what I think, causes more divorce than actually money issues or anything more particular than that.
Well, that's interesting. It's as far as how people adapt and sort of change their lives, and yet they fall into the same places that everyone else does. So what makes you think that communication? What is that exactly? People think that they're communicating all the time.
I think people speak, and I think people listen, but I don't know how much people actually hear each other. Or it's the other way around. They hear each other, but they don't actually listen. But at the end of the day, I think it's really about listening to people's concerns, understanding them, being able to speak without being defensive, and just being able to truly communicate what's going on with you. When you have people that aren't able to speak in a way that they feel heard, I think that, they just shut down. And then when people start shutting down, then they start shutting each other out. And I think then that leads to resentment, and that leads to anger, and then, at that point, sometimes trust gets destroyed then, and then you're really just kind of headed into my office.
So at one point, let me ask you, by the way, when they've come to you, the die is cast, or how often do you see relationships get reconnected once they've come to your doorstep?
I wouldn't say the die is cast. It's funny. In January, I would say, I've already had a whole bunch of consults where people are really just kind of information gathering. Yeah. But one of the things I say to clients when they first come into my office is, are you sure you want to get divorced? And if they hesitate even slightly, my advice is usually go see a therapist, make sure this is what you want to do, because it is such a difficult process. It is so painful. It's emotionally expensive. It's financially expensive. And you need to make sure that this is what you want to do before you move forward. So I wouldn't say that the die is automatically cast when they get in. As to the amount of people that have gotten back together, I think I've had 3 in 16 years.
Wow. 3 in 16 years. And I think you've had more.
In fairness, those are people that started the process and then decided to get back together. So there's many people that come from information. There are many people I've met with a few times that didn't ultimately move forward with it. But the people that actually started it and then turned back, 3.
Wow. So let me ask you another question. So people show up, and you always hear about these bitter divorces. Is that the lawyer, kind of twisting things, or obviously people come from a place of hurt, but is that the lawyer manipulating it, or is it that? I guess what I'm getting at is, can the lawyer diffuse that?
I think a lawyer absolutely can diffuse it, and I think good lawyers should diffuse it. When I have people that come in and they're looking for blood, a lot of times my attitude is, revenge and blood and stuff, it's very, very expensive. And, and it never seems the way you want it to be. People have this image of they're going to go into court and they're going to tell the judge that, he cheated on me, and all of a sudden the judge is going to be shocked by such a thing happening. And it's just not what happens at all. You're not even allowed, in New York specifically, it's a no-fault state. Actually, all states are no-fault now, but in New York, the judges would not even let you discuss it. It's not even a point of discussion. So when you have someone who's so hurt from this affair and just feels like they've, broken all the vows of marriage, and then it gets to a point where I can't even tell the judge that happened because they could care less.
Yeah.
And I think that attorneys that really are able to manage people's expectations, that are trying to really, when people say they want blood, a lot of times say, well, what does that look like to you? Like, what does that really mean? And once you kind of start getting underneath the hurt and underneath the concern, you can see that, they're just angry and they're lashing out, but that's a temporary feeling. And to do real damage to your, your bank accounts by doing full litigation, I just don't think serves anyone.
Well, yeah, as I said, the reason why I introduced you as being a keen mind, because you just kind of lay it out that you are an exception. That too often I see. Well, I think it's also about the expectation. When it starts with the individual, and then by a litigative process, obviously generates more fees for the attorneys. But I see often that so many people have such an unrealistic view of how this process should be played out, and that they see only themselves, and that a wise, kind judge will look upon them favorably and recognize, oh, you've been wronged. Let's get this guy, and that nothing could be further from the truth.
It's true. I mean, a lot of times people need to have that first, what they call the preliminary conference, the first time you're in court, and to see all the other people there, and to see that you get, maybe a minute and a half with the judge, and see that it's just not going to be all about you. And I find a lot that once they do that first meeting, cases usually settle after.
Probably be a good thing once you have them just go to court on their own and let them observe other cases.
Well, actually, with sometimes, the judges can have a tendency to yell at times. And if I have a client that's, a very fragile client who I think is someone who's going to be affected by the yelling, or think that because I'm getting yelled at we're losing, or because the other side's getting yelled at that we're winning, there are times I've had clients go and watch the day before just to kind of familiarize themselves with the courtroom, watch the judge yell at everyone and see that it's not going to mean something on either side, and just kind of get to a point. And maybe it does help them also realize that, you're not going to be different in this sort of situation.
And that's, but it's sort of what I do a little bit of college advisory for young people going into college, and they're looking for jobs. I always try to tell them to shadow someone they're working for, or in their field of interest, or do work for nothing, just to observe and see how people interact in their field. Like, let's say someone wants to go with numbers, they want to become an actuary. Go work with an actuary, see how dull and boring it is, something like that. When you're dealing with people it's not exciting like accounting. And but my point being is that when you see people, in your field up front, or in this case, that they get a dose of reality, so that before you even deal with them, they say, oh, they have a sense that this is how the process works, and you're not investing that time and energy trying to taper those expectations.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very, very important thing. And, you can't blame someone. Obviously, if you haven't gone through this before, why would you know? And, and everyone's going to have a friend that will tell some story that's probably somewhat made up or exaggerated, that they went into court and this is what happened and that's what happened, and it's what they see on TV. So a lot of times
I hear,
the reality...
as a CPA, and I deal with individuals all the time, and I always hear the judge, screwed them. He sided because he's a guy, and he sided with the husband, and my husband got all the money, or something like that. It just or I didn't get my chance to do my say. The attorney is cutting some deal with the judge, and it's all this conspiracy-driven stuff.
Yeah,
everyone's into conspiracies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of people, again, because they didn't feel like they got their day the way that they envisioned it, and that's why I think managing expectations, to bring it back to that, is really so important. People have to realize what the reality of what they're walking into.
Now, you also focus on these celebrity divorces, or I guess do you handle any celebrities within your practice? Obviously, you went to
Well, if I did, I couldn't tell you because there's attorney-client privilege.
Obviously, that. But I mean, I guess what I wanted to touch base here is, now, being a celebrity, I think in some respects things are different because they live in a fishbowl. Or
there are different elements.
Or are their problems the same like anybody else?
I mean, there's still problems, or they still care about their kids. A lot of the basic problems are the same. Dealing with high net worth cases that, maybe are in the celebrity world, a lot of them have assistants. And so you're dealing a lot more in those type of divorces. I mean, I deal a lot more with the assistants and sometimes even with the clients. And there's a lot of people involved in their lives, much more so than I would say the person that, works at an investment bank. There's a lot of, they have agents, they have assistants, they possibly have drivers, they have staff. There's just a lot of different people. They have a whole support
network that caters to them.
So I think that adds an extra level.
Right, and that's what helps separate. It creates an additional level of separation between them and their spouse.
It's possibly, absolutely. The other difference, I will say, just from a legal standpoint, is that in New York, you can value celebrity status. And so that becomes a big battle as to what the value of that person's celebrity status is and what the other spouse's contribution was to that status.
Right.
That adds a whole other layer of
celebrity status. What does that mean?
It's an excellent question. I'm not really sure what it means, except for the fact that the idea is that a court will put some number on it as to what they think this person's, I mean, I'm using the same word as the definition of celebrity status. Basically, for example, if it's somebody that could show up at a party and get paid for it, or if it's somebody that, does book signings or just does appearances or things like that, I guess that's one of the things they use in their valuations. But there's a whole series of cases that deal with this, and, it's an analysis that will bring in appraisers to value.
So so now in the course of when you have a celebrity divorce, have you ever represented a celebrity or more so the spouse?
I've had a little bit of a dabble in each.
A dabble on each side of the deal. So now, I guess how does one? So now when they're trying to split assets, I guess I'm thinking like what just came to mind is like Chris Rock announced he's separating,
right?
And he's been married a good bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So now, does the spouse, in essence, they get 50% of whatever his growth was from date of marriage till the net worth till today? Is that like a?
I mean, possibly. I believe that's a Jersey case, so I can't necessarily speak to the law specifically on that, as I only practice in New York. But my understanding, it would be assuming that there was no prenup, which I don't believe that there was, from at least what I've heard. Yeah, I mean, I would say that whatever's in the marital pot could be subject to distribution.
So, and this is when the the entertainer has to go on the road. I guess that's what happened to Nicolas Cage. Or he just never mind. He just made a lot of bad investments. That's why he had to do a movie every week or something to help pay back all his debtors. So going forward, the other thing I heard a statistic. I was wondering if this is supposedly New Jersey. I can't believe this is accurate, but this was quoted to me by a judge who does divorce law, that the average length of marriage today is 3.9 years.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that.
Is that maybe for young people per se, or people married, first time?
Maybe that's first marriages, young first marriages. I can't say that I've seen that. I mean, maybe they're doing averages to the degree that you may have these longer-term marriages. And they're probably, I would agree if you had said that there are less long-term marriages than there used to be. I mean, I've done divorces of people that are 80 years old. I mean, a lot of people, I don't think, get divorced, stay in it necessarily for the long haul in the way that they used to. So maybe if you average, the fact that there's not as many long marriages, and I think there are a lot of very short marriages. We have definitely had a lot of cases where people have been married under a year. They just realized they made a mistake. So maybe if you average the two, but that sounds a little
that's
off
a little
to me,
bit, I didn't think it was that bad.
Maybe that's just in Jersey. New York doesn't do it that way.
New Jersey, they last longer, I guess. Is that it? I think maybe it's because it's so toxic over here. That's probably the reason why.
No, that could be it.
So, Jacqueline, anyway, we're just running out of time, but I wanted to first thank you for coming on Greenberg News, and anything, what's positive can you leave about the whole, listeners, about the whole divorce process that they should come away with today?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And what I would say is that a positive thing about divorce is that I think that it helps people, it puts them in a position where they can have healthier relationships and just be happier in general.
So it's a happier, healthier relationship. Well, that's the first question. Everything I read is that once you split up, it's really a more impoverishing act because, typically you obviously connect with somebody else, and then now you have two families to support. So rather than one, it's tough enough with one. I would think things don't improve; they just multiply.
Well, it depends. I mean, as we kind of discussed earlier, my clients, they're eating. It's not a problem.
True. I realize you deal with a different slice of bread.
But you know what? If you're happy, who needs money anyway?
Exactly. But I will say this: it's better to have a buck in your pocket than not. There's nothing like financial independence. Yes. It does.
Spoken like an accountant.
Yeah, well, it's spoken like someone likes to travel a lot. That's what it's spoken like. And I can't afford to do all my traveling if I had a limited budget. So, but with that, anyway, I am out of time. Jacqueline Newman, give us a plug. Let our listeners know when they want to reach out to you. How can they find you?
They could find me. They could go to my firm website, which is berkbot.com. It's www.b as in boy, ERK, B as in boy, O, T as in Tom.com. Or you can also on Jacqueline Newman Esquire. Jacqueline Newman ESQ.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Always a pleasure, and really
Thank you so much.
keep up the outstanding work. And everyone should, if you ever have to be in this situation, the best is to come to Jacqueline. That's no doubt.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks again, Brian, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you, and keep up the good work. And that wraps up
Take
this
care.
segment of Greenberg News. We're going to take a brief break. Right back after these messages.
This is 1360 AM. WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station. Brought to you from Forsyth Broadcasting. Or listen to us at WNJCradio.com.